You're listening to Consulting Logistics, presented by FreightPlus. I'm your host, Kyle McNaught. Thanks for checking us out. It's a very, very fun episode today because I'm going to introduce you to the latest edition of the FreightPlus team, someone who we're dying. We were so excited to get her on board, and we're so pumped that she's finally here with us. Jessica Apostolou is going to be our Director of Customer Solutions and just a total badass. In this episode, we're going to chat with Jess about where she found her passion for the supply chain and what she's excited to kind of bring to FreightPlus. So without further ado, Jess, how's it going?
Good morning. It's going. I'm excited. Day 3.
Day 3 craziness of like how fast you jumped into everything. You already been on client calls and all that stuff. I mean, you got to witness our kind of proto office as we kind of get ready for the new move. What do you think kind of first impressions seeing everyone around?
I have to say this is the most like warm, welcoming environment. Everybody is so nice, but like there's just this great underlying hustle that you can feel everybody's genuinely passionate about their job. And all walks of life are, reaching out to each other anytime, but in a respectful manner. It's great. It's so refreshing.
That's awesome. I mean, honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with you. I mean, we are very excited to have you on board. Just because, I mean, not only your background, but you're just excited about supply chain. You're excited about transportation. You're excited about where everything's going. So let's introduce the folks to you a little bit. I know you have some really, really cool background, but tell the folks about yourself, what you did, where you're from, what you went to school for, all that stuff. Let them know about you.
Yeah. So everything just sort of spiraled. Like it just happened. And I'm probably oversharing, telling you when I graduated, but I think it's important. I graduated during the housing collapse in 2009 from college. So I took the first job I could find. So even though I was a public relations major and I did do track, which you mentioned, I was a 4-year member of University of Rhode Island's track and field program. I took a job at Ocean State Jobbers, which for the regional people, might know as Ocean State Job Lot. I worked for the director of logistics, and I was pretty out of my element, but I just sort of got in the weeds with anything that needed to be done in the warehouse. So the receiving team, the outbound team, routing. I managed like their recycling initiative, something that wasn't being tracked at all. And I just got good exposure to what was going on in their supply chain network, which was really unique in and of itself. So that was my first job out of college, which was pretty cool, to be honest with you.
That's all. I mean, it's funny, like we're kind of the same age, right? So it's like we all came out with like there was no jobs or anything. So what could we do? Like find the first thing. But so like you really didn't have too much experience in college with supply chain or anything. I mean, you're PR, so I was communications. So we all took the same dumb classes. So we used to like, wow, why did I go to college? I was already talking. Why did I need communications? But so you kind of got to get that first experience, and that was the first job. I mean, what hooked you? Like, what did you like? Because your career took you to different like locations, really cool things. I mean, what was it about Ocean State that was just so much fun?
I don't want to overshare, but like my boss, he was definitely an interesting dude. He gave me pretty much complete autonomy. And we had a really nice working relationship where it wasn't that way for him and everybody. So I felt like I was sort of bridging a gap there. And as a result, like I just got to learn so much about like the other managers in the facility and where their trouble spots were, and trying to communicate to that to my boss, going back and forth in a way like he wouldn't jump off a cliff about it. So I just got interested in that sense, and their business model is just so incredibly unique about their closeout retailers. A large percent of their suppliers, like they actually own a stake of. It's just a really interesting business model. They have their own fleet. They're a pretty well run operation. And unlike a lot of what I've seen, working at CVS and at Seco. So I didn't know it at the time that it was like a really kind of a gem to get my feet wet in. But when I was looking for change, I kind of fell into a job as a salesperson for custom EDI integrations, which is like you think the other end of the spectrum. It's not, because you're learning about integrations, which for anybody who's like engaged in the tech space now, and I'm talking any kind of tech, not just transportation, supply chain, like it's all about integrations, communicating the most effectively, efficiently, fast, safe. And I learned that there, but it was also like I'm dealing with supply chain documents, purchase orders, advanced shipment notifications, inventory forecasts, all stuff that's really relevant. It is the foundation of the supply chain in order for it to work well. So I'm learning about integrations with, big ERP systems to like QuickBooks Pro and QuickBooks Online, and just standing up new systems and new partnerships and learning how these documents flow and how they need to move quickly and efficiently so that, the customers I was representing at the time, they would avoid chargebacks. They would look good to their partners, which was the Amazons of the world, or JCPenney or Target, or, whoever the case may be. So I needed to position them for success, which tied into my role at Seco. Like I wasn't trying to jump ship, through a friend, like I learned about a role at Seco. I'm like, yeah, heck yeah, I want a piece of that action. So I went for it. And Kyle, I'm sorry if I'm talking too much.
No, it's a podcast. You're supposed to talk. Like I'm interested in what you kind of found, because it's something that Steve talks a lot about here. Steve, the CEO of FreightPlus, of like integrate broadly. And it's interesting to me because you hear, especially kind of my journey in supply chain and kind of trans, you hear it all the time of like, I kind of just fell into trans and then I was hooked. Yeah. And it's kind of what happened with you. It was like, your PR, you're like, I'm going to be in front. I'm going to be this kind of like, have the fun. I'm going to be on the phone, like handling like crisis. But you turned it into, you found a little more excitement in supply chain, which is something a lot of people kind of struggle with. But I mean, you keep hinting at sort of Seco and CVS. I mean, talk a little bit about kind of what you were doing with them, kind of how you're handling kind of the growth and kind of the change that this industry's been going through for like, honestly, just like the past like 10 years, right? Like you jumped into the industry right when it's going through this insane amount of change.
Yeah. And there's definitely no shortage of crises. So, there's still that emotion that I had from my PR days. But at Seco, I was brought on to support I don't want to give, everybody knows their name. They're a Fortune 100 company, tech company. Very big household name. They had purchased some of our software. We had a proprietary suite of supply chain software, purchase order management, warehouse management, transportation management, and they'd all talk to each other. This particular customer had purchased the transportation management, and they were implementing it on a global scale. So they had asked me to sit in at the headquarters where I sat for 8 months, and I was a resource to that team. I managed the training, the learning, creating all the, the guides and SOWs and all that good stuff. Brainstorming modifications, because like they're implementing and like rolling out live features all the time. So it was my responsibility to make sure everybody was trained appropriately, whatever. But that's not that wasn't a role that they didn't need to have it very, very long term, because once everybody got up to speed, they were in good shape. So I was brought on, given my sales background in EDI and integration. They said, come sell it for us. You know it now. So, okay, let's do it. And I did. I started local, and then I started doing like regional sales, and basically the country was just divided, and then the planet was divided because Seco's a global forwarder. So, sometimes I'm on the phone late with China, like helping them, local stations, like, I have a prospect who's interested in, the TMS. I'm like, okay, let's talk through it. Let's come up with a game plan, because there's 3 salespeople who sold tech. And I wanted to help people solve problems. Like, that was the goal. And I truly thought it was like just a fabulous system. So I was at Seco for years. And then, my husband works at CVS. They're in my backyard. I was ready for a change. And it was like a role opened up that looked good. It was an analytical role, which was new for me. Like, I had a foundation in analytics. I was like, I'm going to go for it. And I did. And like, I'll be honest, it was a train wreck. but,
Yeah, but you're not ashamed. You took any job you could. Like, that just makes sense, right? You weren't afraid to do that stuff, which is kind of what supply chain is. You can't be afraid to jump in. I mean, you're a solver of all problems, right? It's like you have no control over a pandemic happening or like produce season. Like, there's things that happen, but that's always the interesting thing about trans, right? It's all happening all the time. And you're like, oh, cool, this global big butterfly flaps its wings over in the Middle East, and now it affects what's happening in the East Coast of America. Like, it's crazy, but I could easily see how you're picking up on that.
Yeah, this role in particular was just an initiative that, like, it required a lot of buy-in from internal stakeholders and then just our vendor partners, where my team was tasked with this really big challenge of, a lot of the CVS vendors are prepaid, we're opportunistic. Can we convert them to collect? And there was this big analysis that had to be done, but, a lack of information. And like I said, you needed the buy-in from all parties. And it was quite an undertaking. And like less than a year into the role, like, I had met my future boss, and he was like, Jess, I really think you should apply to be, the trans manager. We have an opening. It's managing the carriers. It's managing all of our RFPs. It's like scorecarding. It's preferred carrier programs. It's all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So we did it. And that was my most recent role. It was so hard for me to leave. I love CVS. I love my boss. I love my boss's boss, the team. Like, they're full of young go-getters, and they're just doing really big things. We implemented a new TMS. Like, I was a big part of that. Great exposure, and just great exposure to the carriers. So being PR, like, I'm all about relationships. And I feel that one of the things that's an opportunity across the board is I'm a huge carrier advocate. So often, because like transportation is just the last line in supply chain, everything gets blamed on the carrier. The carrier messed up. Did the carrier mess up? Is that really what happened? Like, let's dig into this. And so often I'm having these meetings with carriers, and the first question I like to ask them is, how can we be a better partner for you? And I think if more individuals adopted that practice, it's better for everybody, because first of all, they're moving your freight. You want to be a good partner to them. There could be another opportunity that's sweeter than yours. They don't need your business. They want your business. And it should be a partnership. It's not like you work for me. It's a partnership. So how can we be a better partner? And today, with the market being the way it is, where capacity is so tight, reefer rejections were like 50% 2 weeks ago. Bananas. I would rather have a good relationship with my carrier partner. I would rather make their lives as easy as possible, like, pickups and deliveries, and like, what can I streamline for you? Because that can make your business really unattractive. And when capacity is crunched like this, like, that's when you could shoot yourself in the foot. So it was just taking all that, and like, it sounds really haphazard, my background, but going from like a bird's eye view in logistics to systems and integrations and how things talk, um, to like getting in the weeds in supply chain tech, knowing it, like, and this wasn't like traditional sales because we were pretty lean. Like, I prospect, I did all the pricing, blueprinting, held their hand through implementation and sold. It wasn't like, hey, I'm a sales guy. Here's the engineer. He's going to tell you how it works. Nothing like that.
You sat in on, yeah, you had a seat at their corporate office to go, here's how we're going to implement this. I mean, it's cool. It's interesting. It's fascinating, right? Like you really have a passion for it. I mean, what would you use? Where would you say kind of that passion came from? Like, is it just, it's the ability to, like, it's never the same? Like what makes you so fascinated or so interested in the supply chain? Where did you get this?
I sound super naive, but I love helping people. I think people are good. Like, for the most part, people are awesome. Right. They might disagree or butt heads, but as a whole, people are pretty all right in my book. So I literally just want to fix any sort of problem. And so often there's so many things we just don't know that you can fix. Like, you don't know that there's a solution out there. And that's kind of our responsibility. Our responsibility is like knowing what's the best in the industry and knowing the different solutions. And my job is not to make sure your freight just gets from A to B. It's understanding all the implications that surround the pickup and delivery. What happens before, what happens after? How can we make the process better for you, for the carrier? How can I save you money? How can, there's so many opportunities out there that, and sometimes it just comes down to a conversation and a little bit of education and pointing somebody in the right direction. And yeah, I feel awesome about that. Like, I literally want to make your business better.
So what do you think is like kind of the lowest, like the piece of like lowest hanging fruit right now for kind of like the managed trans people, or not the managed trans, sorry, transportation people, like where you had so much experience, right? You got all that stuff. Where do you find that, like, hey, shippers aren't even thinking about this thing, but it's so valuable if they even just touched it just the quickly?
I don't know if I can narrow it down to one thing. Technology is definitely massive, but like, TMS is like just a given. Unless you're shipping, I don't know, once a week, or like very low volume. Having a system and actually managing those relationships is critical. So often when I was at Seco, I would talk to like a small or medium-sized business. They didn't even have to be super small. And they're like, yep, I just give all my freight to this one carrier. What? Like, sorry, it blows my mind because there's so much risk. When carriers get too comfortable and they know they're just going to get all your freight, what's to stop them from jacking up all your rates? Like, do you know what's going into your rates? Are you benchmarking them? Probably not, especially if you're a small outfit where there's just a couple of guys or gals, managing transportation and the planning of the loads and booking and tracking. It's hard, right? You don't have the resources. And a lot of times those individuals, they don't know where to start. And it's so hard to just get buy-in from executives because they're like, nope, it's not broke. Don't fix it. Like, they're not thinking like, how much is supply chain really costing you? Like, if you're buying goods and selling goods, do you know what the true value of the products that you're buying is? Like, is freight baked in? Is like what I was first working on at CVS. So often you don't know if when a vendor says, I'd like to sell you this pen, I'd like to sell it to you for $2. You can turn around and sell it for $4 or whatever the case may be. But what does this pen actually cost the vendor? With marketing and everything taken out, is 20 cents baked into this pen? for freight, and then you're just taking the $2 on. What if you can move it for 10 cents? That's a big piece of the pie, and it adds up. So there's, technology is really going to help you get there. But honestly, more than that is just like staying on top of what you don't know. And that's where we come in. That's our responsibility, is to do that.
That's the hardest part, right? It's like it's so much work. It's every day. Like, it's sort of why you could see like a small and mid-sized company going like, hey, I just want one. Just please one, take care of this. Have it be the same template. That type of things, the struggle with kind of everyone's dealing with. I mean, if I was to ask you kind of what you think the most kind of logistics transportation folks are struggling, what do you think they struggle with the most? Is it really just that idea of where do I start, or kind of what do you think is the biggest struggle for most logistics transportation folks?
Absolutely. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know if I have a budget. I don't even know if I have buy-in. And a lot of times, like the old school folks, like they're just like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If that is the approach your company is taking, I guarantee you're wasting money. I feel like I sound like a jerk for saying it or just being blunt, but you're wasting money. So that, to me, that's the biggest struggle is you don't know where to start. But if you haven't changed your processes in a couple of years, there's an opportunity.
And just because the technology alone, I mean, you look at the world we live in, and then you look at the dynamics that are just hitting the freight industry in the first place. I mean, EDI, like the electronic logging devices, all that type of stuff is like hours of service, coronavirus, all these changes. It's like, how could your process possibly still work in this world right now? Like, it's just crazy to think of that. Which is sort of what's so cool, especially kind of with your position and what you're what you're going to bring and what you are already 3 days in bringing to the table is like solutions that clients aren't understanding, really helping people understand the implications, right? That's sort of the really cool thing. We spoiler alert, we talked about that yesterday. It was one of those, I'm like, wrote it down. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. But I mean, you see that a lot. You talked about it, like the communication alone is kind of something that's as important as technology. I mean, communication's probably number one of your priority list, right?
Yep, absolutely. And I will say, especially if you don't have like a ton of buying power, if you're a smaller or medium-sized outfit, you might not be getting the attention from carriers who I rely on a ton for education. If you're not getting the attention, you're not learning as much, and it's just harder to keep a finger on the pulse.
Oh yeah, and especially right now. Like, I mean, recording in 2021, absolutely. The capacity is insane. Like, you have no idea what's happening, and like neither do they as much. I mean, they already have driver shortage, they have all this stuff, but like at least having that communication between them is going to help you out. Let's transition a little bit into the role. Let's talk a little bit. I mean, let's talk about what kind of you're hoping to bring to the role. What should kind of our clients or even potential clients look forward to like working with you? What's so exciting about what you're going to do with us at FreightPlus?
This is really exciting. So I have known the folks at FreightPlus for years. I just worked with them previously, and like we always stayed in communication, and the stars sort of aligned when I took this role. I hadn't been looking, but it just came up, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to regret this if I don't go for it. And the leadership here, I'm not saying this because I feel obligated in any sense, but like the leadership here is dynamite people. So anyway, what I'm hoping to bring to the table is, I think my goal, and having talked to Steve and to Jill, the leaders here, they want to offer like the boutique Four Seasons type service to our customers. And I could not agree more. My goal is you get, direct representation. They know your business. They're confident. They are going to continuously educate you. But in addition to that, like my goal is to be able to answer any customer questions before they even have them. That's my goal. Like, I want to make you look good for your leadership. I want to make you look good for your vendors. There's nothing but wins to be had. And that is I see our team's function being.
As the marketing guy, I'm pumped for that. Our team being proactive, being out there, like I already know, like with our existing clients today, it's kind of naturally, it's built in, it's kind of baked into what we do. And like you say, it comes from the leadership. It's always be looking for how to be proactive. How do you assist? I can tell you, it's something that our clients just lose their minds for. Tons of testimonial, tons of stuff back of like, it's like it's funny because like we always talk about like, hey, when we talk to our clients for testimonial, it's like, oh, we saved them money. But when you ask them what you do, they don't even pay attention to that. They're like, oh no, you're proactive about this. You talk about this. It's all that type of stuff. I mean, what type of solutions are you thinking you're bringing to the table? Are we collaborating? Are we doing videos? What's your thoughts with the stuff that solutions we're doing?
I mean, literally the opportunities are endless. Like it's such a long runway for us. The team is growing super quickly. So right now my focus is just like making it very scalable, but in a sense that like I find that most companies are reactive. We're getting proactive. We're getting things done in advance. So we are set up so that, as we grow, our current customers don't suffer. We have the bandwidth to give new customers that same boutique attention. Nobody suffers. Everything's clean. The data is normalized. It's in, accessible places. There's actionable items that are tracked and followed up on. Like actually, like I'm going to take that away. Yes, but I'm actually going to get back to you. I'm not going to just take it away. We're going to follow up. So right now I'm just drinking it all in and writing down like fast and furious ideas. That's what I'm doing today, but tomorrow's going to be different. And
I mean, it's clearly because the Fast and Furious trailer came out. So you're like, I got a branding, I got a PR mindset. I see what you're doing right there. Very, very smart of you. I guess quick answers, right? We'll do 2 quick answers. What excites you the most about your role?
The people.
I mean, I don't know. You didn't watch us play basketball yesterday. You probably would have.
I cannot wait to see the blooper reel. The score was 11-4, and I heard there were like 10-year-old hecklers. So I'm dying.
The 10-year-old, they called next, but then they decided it wouldn't be worth it because they're like, we'll just smoke these fools. The FreightPlus basketball team that I thought we were gonna kill it turns out not so much.
I'm in next time. I will be there.
I think it'll be embarrassing more. Like you'll crush us. You'd be like, oh God. The people, that's awesome. What excites you the most about FreightPlus, like in general, especially kind of the managed trans, right? I think that's one of the cooler things is that you've gotten to see all the different ways that transportation sort of works in companies. What excites you about what the managed trans offering that we produce, we provide?
Yeah. Autonomy. Work like, for anybody who's listening to this, if you haven't met Jill or Steve, the president and CEO, like they're the kindest but most like knowledgeable, smart, biggest hustlers ever. And they trust you. So they trust me. I feel very honored that they do. And, there's that lack of red tape. And if a customer needs something, I'm going to make sure that they get it. Like, that, so that's what I'm excited about. Problem solving, getting creative, having resources, having an awesome team and amazing executive leadership to fall back on. Those are the things that I'm most excited about. I want to solve your problems and I don't want roadblocks. Short answer.
There we go. I think honestly, our existing clients are going to listen to this and they're going to be so hyped and jazzed about what you're bringing to the table. Final questions. What's your PR for Javelin? And then what's your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, karaoke. Sweet Jesus. Nobody wants to hear me do karaoke.
For sure.
the last time I did karaoke, I sang Hey Jude. It was awful. Yeah. So
I sang Let's Give Them Something to Talk About. And I made my wife pee her pants because I sang it to an old lady who she was about it. And she was like, I was like, oh my God, you're ridiculous. But that's not even my go-to.
That's not your go-to? I don't do enough karaoke. I'm supposed to have a go-to. But I'm a huge fan of No Sugar Tonight. That's an oldie. That used to be my pump up song when I threw the javelin. I would like blast it on my iPod. That's how old I am. Like turn it up on my big iPod.
You're like wheeling it do all the way up.
Yep.
I got 150 songs loaded. That's
go. Right. That one was on loop, so none of the other ones mattered. Yeah, my PR was 145.
Oh, so no one in FreightPlus can touch you, huh?
I mean, they probably could. Yeah, I was fourth, third, and second in the conference, my HN conference. And I missed first my junior year by half an inch. But anyway, that's okay.
Measure again.
Jess, yeah, it's still there.
We're all so excited. I know that the energy in the room kind of changed. Like it shifted when you joined. You can kind of, when they announced it, like everyone kind of had this buzz around them. So we're so excited here. We know just for you joining, the clients like already you can kind of feel a little more picking up the pace. Like, let's go. This is super cool. I can't wait to kind of see what we're bringing together. I can't wait for the collaborations we're going to do, all this type of stuff. So I guess the last thing, how do people get in contact with you? I mean, clearly on LinkedIn, you are well liked on there. It's like our biggest post ever was just announcing you joining us. So is that the best way for kind of folks out there to connect with you, or kind of what's the easiest email? Although your last name is a mouthful.
Yeah. Especially since I don't use my full last name for my email. That's a mega mouthful. Yeah, LinkedIn is totally fine. I'm on there as Jess Apostolou or Jessica Apostolou. APOSTOLOU. So it's my email is japostolou@freightplus.io.
Yep, absolutely. And we'll include links and stuff like that. So Jess, this is probably the first of many podcasts we're going to continue doing. We're hoping to do something kind of once a month, sort of how to be proactive, how to kind of understand the implications. So something really cool. So folks out there listening, if you got questions or things like that for myself or Jess, I mean, definitely reach out, let us know. But Jess, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you sitting down on day 3 and talking on camera about what you think about us, because that's not a pressure or anything. So
yeah, it was awesome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. See you soon.
All right. Take care.
And that's our show. Are you as passionate about the supply chain as Jess is? Let us know in the comments section and we'll have you on the show. Let's talk. In the meantime, subscribe to our channel and please share this with anyone you think will enjoy it. Thanks for watching Consulting Logistics. I'm Kyle McNaught. Rock and roll.